Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again. You know, I really wish I had scheduled Moomins and the Comet Chase to be after this, because I feel like I kind of need a palate cleanser after today's review. Do you think I've been too nice lately? Looked at too much good stuff? Stuff with artistic merit? Stuff that, hey, maybe I didn't like, but I respected it and could tell that there was something that people would latch onto and enjoy and read some deeper meaning into? Something that didn't make you feel like the media in question was punching you in the face, kneeing you in the crotch, and then demanding you pay them for services rendered? Oh boy, then today's the episode for you! Avengers Disassembled is one of those stories that leaves you utterly baffled how anyone in the creative process didn't raise objections to it. Question what the hell they were doing. Did anyone, the writer, the penciler, the editors at various levels, seriously look over the confusion, the violence, the retcons, the killing of popular characters, and the end of 500 issues of the Avengers and say out loud, yeah, this is a great story we're making. This is a thing that comic fans will find beloved and will be a great way to kick off the new Avengers series coming out. I want to be clear here because I often get derided as someone who hurls vitriol at creators that I am not trying to personally insult said creators with those remarks. They made a bad story just like tons of creators have done so. My remarks here are attacking the bad story, not the people who made the bad story. But I have to ask that sort of thing because I'm puzzled how a story like this gets made! Avengers Disassembled is the Titans/Young Justice graduation day of Marvel's premier superhero team. It is a story that was so bad that, a few years ago, when I summarized it in the intro to my House of M review, the Wikipedia article actually listed in the plot summary all the various contradictions, mistakes, and elements that got repaired by later other writers. It has been edited since then to remove those, but it goes to show what kind of a reputation this storyline has. And it's a shame they didn't keep that stuff in there for my sake, at least. As I've said before, I am more of a DC guy than a Marvel, so some of the stuff that's just flat out wrong may go over my head in this review, but oh boy, I know some of the big ones! We've covered some of them already in the aforementioned House of M review. Inexplicably, this is also apparently a crossover storyline. That kind of thing that some people qualify as an event, and I get why. Sometimes comic companies will have storylines that are big and are influencing several books, even though they are not essential reading. When I originally read this story in the mid-2000s, I had no idea that was the case because the story felt otherwise self-contained. But no, apparently the insidious tendrils of the story reached into other books. The spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins to it feature a storyline where Peter mutates into a spider-like creature and gives birth to himself again, just so he can have organic web shooters like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Spoilers, none of that happens in this review, but let's put a pin in that one for the future, shall we? What's funny is that while Avengers Disassembled is the name of the quote-unquote crossover element, and it's the popular name for the storyline in Avengers number 500 to 503, it is not the actual name of the storyline. The storyline is just called Chaos. It is a sadly appropriate title, though. Let's dig into Avengers Disassembled and, well, break it down for you.
Atop the fourth wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn.
Reading from a trade and no looking at the covers, and who boy, I could have talked about them. The trade for this story is the 500th issue's cover, and it blows. But we've got 4 issues to cover anyway, so let's just dive right in. We open at Avengers Mansion as several of the team, Hawkeye, Scott Lang, the Wasp, She-Hulk, and Kelsey Lee, aka Captain Britain, are standing around a table just chatting. Viper. Really? Really? Madam Hydra? Madam Hydra, Viper, whatever, yes. The one with the green hair? Yes, my dear Ant-Man. The one with the sexy green hair and green leather. You have a thing for her. I really do. Avengers number 500! Learn which supervillains Hawkeye wants to have sex with. You're a pig, Hawkeye. You don't even know what we're talking about, Jennifer. I was just listing off the women with green hair that I admire the most. You wouldn't know anything about that, She-Hulk. Janet, am I wrong? Is he being a pig? No, you are not wrong. And yes, he is a pig. See? In reality, they're just trying to decide which Fortnite skins to buy. Hawkeye says that Scott asked him what his number 1 can't have is. The one woman they want to bang but can't. I'm sure this is supposed to be charming in some capacity. Maybe if the women were actually involved in this about anyone they'd like, it'd work better. Though I think it would still come across as kind of gross. But fortunately, or unfortunately I suppose, since that means the plot is starting, they're interrupted by a security alarm at the back entrance. Someone busted a hole through it, and it appears to be a dead former Avenger, Jack of Hearts. This is one of those things where the fact that I'm more of a DC guy is to the detriment of the review, since the significance of this is a little lost on me. I didn't know Jack of Hearts existed until I read the story back in the day. But I can still tell when something's a dick move to do in a story when people are fans of a character. Jack of Hearts had died when his body could no longer contain a bunch of energy inside of him, taking a child murderer who had kidnapped Scott Lang's daughter Cassie out with him in the process. So naturally, despite the fact that the guy on their security monitors looks like he's been left in the oven for way too long, almost zombie-like frankly, ironic considering Jack of Hearts would properly come back to life in a Marvel zombie story, Scott Lang rushes out to meet him over the concerned objections of the others. Scott tries to speak with him, rambling about what happened before, until Jack simply says, "I'm sorry," and explodes, taking out a good chunk of the mansion with him. Well, sorry's not good enough, dude. Do you know how expensive it's gonna be to repair that? It would've been better if you had drunkenly crashed a car through the gate. The Avengers, plus Jarvis, pull themselves out of the wreckage. They quickly discover the crater left by the explosion, and a skeletal hand sticking out of the ground, implied to be Scott Lang. How did your arm bones stay fused together like that? Wouldn't they have been blasted apart from the explosion? Scott would remain dead for about 7 years, just FYI, practically a lifetime in terms of comic book deaths, where he'd actually get saved via time travel, everyone just thinking he'd died. Which just makes me think that Jack of Hearts was carrying around a Spirit Halloween skeleton arm for some reason. We cut over to the United Nations, where Tony Stark, at this point also serving as Secretary of Defense for the United States, is addressing the Assembly. Every civilized nation is represented here today, and we are resolved to keep the most basic commitment of civilization: free snacks in the lobby. However, as soon as he spots the Latverian ambassador, something seems to happen. He gets sweaty and can't focus, but he doesn't collapse. Rather, he begins ranting about the ambassador and Latveria in general, the evil committed by Dr. Doom or whoever is running it that week. We should take a vote. Yeah, let's all take a vote right now to just wipe your country off the map already and build an amusement park out of the whole thing and call it a day. I mean, Euro Disney had a rough start, but it got there in the end. It could be okay. Hank Pym tries to pull him away, but he just keeps going. Even T'Challa in the audience trying to get him to calm down, but Tony suddenly raises his repulsor ray as if to murder the Latverian ambassador. He finally seems to pull himself together and step off the stage, even including this bit to Hank Pym. Don't you have a wife to beat? Get out of my nose, man!
Leave your stupid comments in your pocket.
I laugh about the "get out of my nose" remark, but that first line, yeesh. Even for the explanation of what's going on, it feels very wince-inducing to include that, especially since it implies how Tony secretly feels about Hank Pym. I'm just saying, maybe don't, in the first issue of your new direction for the team, and again, the 500th overall, imply that they're all annoyed and judgmental of each other, they're gross, or that one of them wishes they could wipe out a country full of innocent people because of the actions of their government. Now, admittedly, on the 500th issue point, Marvel sometimes does this thing with their numbering. Yes, this was the 500th Avengers issue, but that's its legacy number. This was actually the third Avengers volume, only number 85 of that, but they still had the full numbering on there, and they were celebrating it as the 500th, so what gives? Anyway, in private, the Scarlet Witch asks Tony what the hell just happened. Tony says that he knows the feeling he has right now. He's drunk. You've been sober for so long. Wanda, I didn't have anything to drink. I just had like an entire case of those hard Mountain Dews and... Uh-oh. They get the emergency signal from the mansion, and we cut over to it, where S.H.I.E.L.D. is in the process of trying to investigate while cleaning up the damage. Jarvis keeps wanting to get up, leading to a soldier casually insulting him, but a nice moment from Captain America, who says they treat Jarvis as if they were speaking to him. As far as he's concerned, he's also an Avenger. I mean, Thanos would not see a butler coming at him, so he's got the element of surprise going for him at least. Jarvis explains that Scott is dead and oh my god, what the hell is that expression on Cap?
No surprise!
They spot a Quinjet coming towards them, and not slowing down. Cap's able to see that Vision is flying it right before it smashes into the ground near them. Oh great, thanks Vision! Now the insurance company is gonna claim that some of the damage done by the explosion was actually done by you, and that it's not covered in their policy! He emerges from the fiery wreck. Avengers, I bid you tidings in this, our darkest hour. Hop into Quinjet and I'll explain what's going on. Oh, right. I am sorry to inform you that I am no longer in control of the organisms that make up my body structure. They have unionized and gone on strike. And that you are no longer in control of anything that we, as a group, hold dear. Back in my day, we talked about which supervillains gave us boners in the privacy of our own rooms, not in the meeting hall. I cannot explain to you in terms that any of you would understand why and how this has happened to us, but I have no doubt that there will be many retcons in the days to come. For I am only now beginning to comprehend where it is that we, as a group, have failed, and why we are about to be punished. I've read this story before, and know what happens afterwards, and I am baffled where there is any failure on the part of the Avengers that led to this. I have this inkling in the back of my mind. Just like with Armageddon 2001, just like with Spider-Man Sins Past, there was a plan for this story and how it was going to proceed, one that got very far along in executing it, before they completely switched gears. Thus stuff like Vision saying, "We failed and this is all our fault," makes absolutely no sense. Now, it's unlikely this is the case. There are clearly too many moving parts that happened after this for it to be a last-minute change of plans, but maybe there was some other way it was going to be executed and it got cut. But in any event, Vision says that he's not the one who's doing this, and he feels ashamed over it, right as his skin starts melting. Vision, might want to step away from the fire, dude, unless you plan on a new, creepier look. A bunch of orbs shoot out of his mouth and form into Ultron clones that begin opening fire on them. Wasp is near breaking point with all the crap she's had to deal with today, not helped by Falcon, who showed up along with Cap, to say, "Is this a bad time to hand in my resignation?" Ha 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 ha! At least one Avenger is dead, possibly more given how this is going, and you're under attack by Ultrons. Now is a good time for jokey jokes! While Hawkeye fails to do any damage, the heavy hitters storm in to punch them, Wasp wondering if this is all connected. Cap quickly discovers that the bots go down if you decapitate them. Despite what I said about Wasp, She-Hulk clearly has reached her breaking point as, while the others speculate about what just happened, she grabs the Vision's body, rants at it, and then rips him in half when the others try to get her to calm down. That's 2 characters killed out of nowhere! Happy 500th issue! This really does make me think for a second, which is a worse 100th issue? This or Avengers number 200? I mean, it's a game nobody wins, but like, at least Carol Danvers was still alive at the end of that disgusting fiasco. It took Vision another 6 years to partially return to life with the Young Avengers, then another 2 to be fully restored. I bring up the time it takes to resurrect these characters to remind you of how stupid killing characters in these books is. You take away potential stories you could have had with them alive by smashing the toy instead of putting it back in the toy box. And for what, really? Shock moments that most fans recognize to be pointless because we know they're gonna come back eventually? In most cases, still miss you, Danny Chase. In her out-of-control rage, She-Hulk smacks away Wasp and starts punching at Cap, finally grabbing a shield car to smash down on him. We cut to mouths in a void saying that the Avengers have much to answer for and that this is just the beginning. They try to explain this later on in a goofy manner, but rest assured it's head-scratching knowing what's actually happening. Anyway, we open number 501 with Tony Stark talking with the White House Chief of Staff about what happened at the UN. Despite Tony's pleading and request to talk to the president himself, the Chief of Staff makes it clear that they want his resignation. It's really sad that nowadays this very likely wouldn't lead to that. He heads out to answer the distress call at Avengers Mansion, coming in right as Captain Britain tries and fails to stop She-Hulk from smashing the car on Cap. And despite a sword, Cap's shield, laser beams, nope, none of that can stop her. Except Iron Man punching her across the jaw. That finally brings her down.
I figured it out. We just need to hit them really, really hard.
After helping Cap up, Falcon recovers Wasp's tiny unconscious body while the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents tend to Captain Britain. Hank Pym, having grown giant-sized, also arrives and immediately spots everything that's happened. The Ultron robots, the torn-in-half Vision, but most importantly, the unconscious Wasp, and quickly takes Falcon in his hand to the hospital. We cut over to said hospital, where Falcon and the doctor help fix Cap's dislocated shoulder. That really hurt. Sorry, Captain, you pulled it out of its socket. There's no nice way that happens, and there's no nice way to put it back. Actually, it is perfectly possible for it to fall out of place sometimes and can be put back in painlessly. Doctors can also apply anesthetic for it, though I'll grant you that that might be more difficult for someone like Captain America. And those painless ones are not usually caused by someone hitting you with a car, but I'm just saying. We get a quick montage of the others. Captain Britain in critical condition, She-Hulk in a purple healing tube pending investigation of what the hell happened, Scott's remains, or I guess what they presume to be his remains, since, again, time travel shenanigans, in a morgue, Vision's remains boxed up to be sent to Stark Enterprises, and indeed the Wasp in critical condition as well. As Hank Pym notes, normally if she's hurt bad enough, her body will revert to its normal size, but for some reason that's not happening here, which kind of makes it difficult to treat said injuries. He rants at her a bit because of their strained relationship, but that he doesn't care about that right now. Only that he needs her to recover. You know what today taught me? No matter what I do in this life, Giant Man, Ant-Man, Yellow Jacket, doesn't matter. Accidentally creating Ultron will be the only thing I am ever remembered for. That's not true! Tony reminded you at the UN of the only other thing that you'll ever be remembered for. What have I done to this team? This isn't the life I want. This isn't how I wanted us to end up. Admittedly, the height difference was about what I expected. In a nearby atrium, Cap, Iron Man, Hawkeye, and Falcon discuss what's going on. And Hawkeye is being a jackass. Here's something I've really commonly seen in comics that are way too chaotic and paced to be going so fast that you have no time to think about what's going on, which is an especially bad thing to do in a medium that normally comes out month to month, since then you do have time to think about it. And that is characters interrupting each other, usually for snide, snarky responses when someone is trying to actually stay focused on the task at hand. Tony is trying to figure out what's going on, but Hawkeye can't shut his goddamn mouth for 2 seconds, and instead goes off on a rant. And actually, I think that this was just a bad day that isn't over. A bad day? Yeah, a really bad day. I'm not being braggy, but we are extraordinary individuals, we are. But we don't have good and bad days. We have extraordinarily good days, and we have extraordinarily bad days. This was an extraordinarily bad day.
Shut up!
Oh, but he doesn't. He keeps going. You know what else? We had it coming. This ain't gonna be the most popular thing I ever say, but yeah, we had it coming. Oh yeah, Scott really had it coming, getting blown up because he was concerned about a friend. She-Hulk had it coming. Imagine something making her so frustrated that she almost kills Captain America. Wasp had it coming. Jarvis had it coming. Oh hey, here's an idea. Shove an arrow up your ass, dude. We're all about the short term. We're all about whatever is in front of us that second, and then we're on to the next thing.
Look, I think we've all got something to bring to this discussion, but I think from now on the thing you should bring is silence.
Tony tries to point out that all of this stuff happening so quickly means something more than just a bad day, and yet in the Marvel Universe, this event sides with Hawkeye and describes it as the worst day in Avengers history. And you know what? Fair enough considering how crappy the story is, though I don't think that's how they meant it. Falcon interrupts Tony this time, suggesting that Ultron is probably behind all this. He's certainly a big enough threat, though it doesn't explain what happened to She-Hulk or what happened at the UN. Speaking of, Tony's about to tell them about what happened there when Hank Pym joins the game of Interrupt Tony Stark to rant and rave at him about it. And hey, to be fair, he's not exactly in a good place mentally with what happened to Wasp, but I'm saying this conversation is growing increasingly irritating when they can't let the smartest man in the room get in 2 words to try to figure out what's going on, and instead everyone is just being a jackass. But yes, Tony admits that he was overcome with the feeling of being drunk despite not having a single drink. And since he was immediately asked to step down as Secretary of Defense afterwards, and yeah, I joked about the lack of consequences in government positions earlier, but especially in the Marvel universe, with psychic attacks, doppelgangers, robot imposters, or any number of possible explanations, you'd think they'd at least ask Tony about it or investigate it before immediately jumping on hand in your resignation. However, Hank Pym has turned his dial all the way up to stupid asshole and thinks Tony is just trying to use this situation to get off the hook. Cap and Falcon believe Tony, but as we've seen, Hawkeye is also being a dumbass, so instead of supporting his friend, he says it's difficult for him to believe that because of his own alcoholic father making excuses. Which, hey, is valid, but time and place. If Tony truly did fall off the wagon, that has to be dealt with. But timing is everything, and this is not the time! Despite the vocal assurance of Captain Goddamn America, Tony angrily exclaims that he can't believe he's not getting support from the team he helped fund, and decides to fly off. Cap says he'll pull himself together and rejoin them, though Yellow Jacket says that the UN is meeting right now, and they're likely going to pull their support for the Avengers. But no time for any of that right now. They're interrupted again, but this time by an emergency signal at the mansion. They head there, Yellow Jacket deciding to stay and look after Janet, and there isn't actually an emergency at the mansion. It's just dozens of superheroes have arrived to answer the call for help from them. This is supposedly the basis for this being a crossover quasi-event. This would actually be a kind of cool shot featuring so many former Avengers, if not for the fact that everything is tinted red and they're just standing around in front of the mansion, which is still inexplicably on fire. Does nobody have, like, water-based powers or something to put that out? I'm sure the team would appreciate not having their stuff still be burning. Anyway, this brings us to issue 502. I should note that my scans here are coming from the individual issues, which also have recap pages. Nothing big to report on them, except for a couple things here. Before the Avengers can react to this tragedy, longtime member the Vision crashes a Quinjet into the mansion, unleashing a small horde of unstoppable Ultron robots on the remaining members. Unstoppable, except for how they stopped them. And then at the bottom, when Captain America and Hawkeye return to the mansion, they are met with a large gathering of one-time Avengers and Associates W ready to help. How the hell did that typo make it to print? Hell, how did it make it onto the digital release for these scans? Like, given how it's using a justify alignment, meaning the text forms consistent walls on the left and right of it and stretches the spaces between words to do that, this must have been done in some kind of word processing program, so was there no spell check to recognize the typo? This book had 2 assistant editors, an associate editor, and the actual editor! That's 4 people it had to get through for proofreading! And yes, a typo is the smallest of complaints one can have about this book, but I'm skipping these recap pages as I write the review, and I still have noticed it! And if they're missing obvious stuff like that, what are the things that they're really letting through? Especially when we have ourselves some laziness right out of the gate. That 2-page spread we ended the last issue on? Let's reuse it for the first panel, add a dialogue balloon, and then tint it even more red! Anyway, Cap asks them why they've all come. What else would you have us do, Captain? This, we were all Avengers once upon a time, and the Avengers are in trouble. The call went out, we have answered it, and we all decided to stand outside the gate waiting for you to get here. Also, despite Falcon flying in separately from you, he managed to fly faster than the Quinjet and put himself in the middle of the crowd instead of standing outside of it. Nick Fury is on hand and tells them that as noble as their presence is, the place is still an active crime scene. While it's on fire! And they need to disperse. But Colonel Fury, from what you've told me, this is one of, if not the worst days in Avengers history. So, worse than Avengers The Crossing? Worse than Heroes Reborn? You're really saying that a zombie exploding and killing one member of the team, and then another person is taken over and expels Ultrons that are quickly dispatched, and then She-Hulk loses control and rips his body in half, is the worst day they've ever had? One of their worst, certainly, but come on. But yeah, Fury says that they could be contaminating the crime scene by their mere presence. Any one of you could be emitting toxins or radiations into the air that are corrupting the environment, affecting the atmosphere.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Why is he pointing at T'Challa when he says this? Is the Black Panther known for being radioactive? That can't be good. After confirming to Carol Danvers that Scott Lang is dead, more bad news hits. The UN officially severs its ties with the Avengers. This is not to discount the staggering achievements they have had in the pursuit of this world's safety, but we've decided it's best to make it even harder for them to do that. But in light of today's public performance by Anthony Stark, mixed with the growing concern over the stability of such so-called hero organizations, we will be revisiting this. Yeah, clearly some of this was set up for Civil War, but let's put that aside for the moment. For once, Hawkeye's anger is justified. That they didn't even bother to try contacting the Avengers about this. Not even a, hey, if you want our continued support, Tony Stark is out kind of ultimatum. Just screw over Earth's mightiest heroes. Plus, it's just an asshole thing to do right when the Avengers are in the middle of being attacked. Nick Fury reminds everyone that they should disperse, but it's time again for interruptions as a giant alien ship begins hovering over the area. Nick Fury asks the helicarrier if they're seeing this, and they are not. Cap quickly gets everyone organized, but the ship unleashes a bunch of War of the Worlds-esque ships that begin firing on everything. And after the helicarrier repeatedly tells Nick Fury they don't read anything, it's only then that Fury tells them to look out a goddamn window, and they're like, oh, there is something there! Idiots in the clouds, idiots on the ground, oops, all idiots! They're quickly identified as the Kree, and they manage to pull one of the soldiers from their craft, Captain America demanding to know what the hell this is all about. The soldier rambles that the day was foretold, the end of the Avengers, and they have come to fulfill that prophecy, and they will die by the hand of those they betrayed. Though as Cap says, how the hell did they betray them? The soldier then beams away, like 10 feet anyway, as dozens of other Kree soldiers beam down to fight too. Nick Fury points out that that doesn't make any sense. They have a massive technological advantage and huge fleet in the air. They can level the city without ever stepping one foot on the ground, so why beam down at all? Hawkeye, having dipped out briefly to restock on arrows, comes back and just starts going Legolas on them, shooting arrow after arrow into the Kree. While he rants and raves about how they picked the wrong day to do this, an energy blast hits his back, setting his explosive arrows on fire. Apparently just taking the backpack full of arrows off was not an option he considered. It's certainly possible that it's more complicated than just the 2 straps over his shoulders, but that's what it looks like. No buckles or complicated harness or anything keeping it on him, and hell, I've got to imagine this was a possibility he'd considered before. And instead, he grabs a Kree that has a jetpack, forces it to fly up and right into the Kree mothership, the explosives going off, and somehow this entire alien spaceship goes down with stuff designed to be fired out of a bow on the outside of their ship. Now, to give the comics some credit here, these ships aren't real, or at least they're not actual Kree ships. But considering the lasers they're firing are still real, I'm confused why the material they're made out of wouldn't be as strong as the real thing. Cap rallies the heroes and they force the Kree back, who suddenly all teleport away with no readings they were ever there. However, investigating the remains of the mothership, they see that the material the ship made out of isn't really metal. Sure, some kind of transmutation took place, but it was still a spaceship floating in the air, unleashing enemy troops, and it could still shoot, so why the hell wasn't it sturdy enough to at least partially withstand that explosion? However, Part 3 ends with the arrival of Doctor Strange, who says he thought by now they would have understood the true nature of these attacks. The magics are being abused. Oh, so of course the answer is, it's magic! We don't have to explain it! So we open Part 4 on a flashback to the Scarlet Witch and the Wasp just lounging around the Avengers pool and watching Hawkeye practice with his bow. Janet and Clint had had a bit of a thing going on in the book up to that point, and Janet admits that she had a brief scare that she might be pregnant, but it turned out to not be the case. Considering the track record of pregnancies in that building, that is probably for the best, Janet. Janet says that she doesn't think it's wise to have a kid in a dangerous environment like superheroes. Superheroes should not have kids. That should be a rule.
Sounds like a really stupid rule if you ask me.
And you thought you could have 2? Wanda is confused and doesn't know what she's talking about, and Janet very stupidly tries to walk away and just be like, oh, I'm just tipsy and need to pee. Ignore me! We'll be getting back to this in a second, but I have a difficult time believing that Janet, leading the Avengers at that, would be so stupid as to try to use that as an excuse. Sure, in her panic, she probably couldn't think of anything better, but if she can't think under pressure and be like, oh, didn't you say you wanted 2 kids, or am I remembering wrong? And leave it at that. A confused Wanda closes her eyes and we cut to the present, where Doctor Strange introduces himself to anyone who doesn't know who he is. I am talking to you from the astral plane. A metaphysical dimension layered on top of the one in which you live. And yes, before you ask, it is rent-controlled. He explains that he's using some spells to temporarily hide them while he talks, since the force behind this can probably monitor them. They ask who did this. Is there anyone the Avengers have dealt with who has this level of mystic power? Someone who could orchestrate this level of chaos? The Dire Wraiths? Morgan Le Fay? Salem 7? Hell, any supervillain with advanced technology and a genius intellect like Kang could probably either manipulate things to do this or learn about and have access to magic. And the Avengers have fought a lot of those. Cap has his suspicions, though, and we have a flashback to Wanda meeting with Agatha Harkness. Unlike her appearance in WandaVision, Agatha Harkness's comic history tends to lean more on the heroic side, having initially been introduced as Franklin Richards' nanny and warning the Avengers about upcoming disasters before becoming Wanda's teacher in magics. Wanda demands to know why everyone thinks she had children and what happened to them, and then we cut to the present, where indeed Captain America has said that he thinks Wanda did all this. Yes, Wanda did indeed have children, until they were revealed to be fake, actually constructs made by her magic and empowered by pieces of Mephisto's soul. So we have him to thank for part of this too. Oh yeah! Mephisto was another villain who could have been behind this! And eventually, she got her memory wiped of her children. And this story says that she has learned of what happened and has turned to evil because of it. Wow. A very traumatic thing to suddenly realize that you had children and then lost them and then had your memories of them erased. It's an awful, awful thing to go through. Which is why she went through it already, and the entire premise for this incident, for House of M, for the direction of Wanda's character for the next decade of stories, is based on a continuity error! Yeah! Wanda recovered the memories of her children years back! She remembered! She mourned! She moved past it! Some people will argue that continuity mistakes don't make a bad story, that it's more important that the individual narrative of a story as it exists in itself and how the characters of a story are presented matter more. The drama of the situation supersedes whether this contradicts something from years past. I will argue that if a character explodes, then suddenly shows up having not exploded, and there is never an explanation for why they are here unexploded, and said explosion was an important event, but now everyone is pretending that it didn't happen, then maybe there's something wrong with your story! Because superhero comic books, particularly Marvel and DC's output, are a medium and storytelling method with long-standing continuity. Unless they appear in other books, unless it's labeled as an alternate universe, unless their release schedule is different than the norm, you get 12 issues per year, once per month, and thus you're invested in these for the long term. You could be purchasing this book and reading about these characters for years, decades even. There's a difference between someone offhandedly saying, I've never driven a car before, in a random story written 50 years ago, and then now they are an experienced driver. And massive character motivations and shifting their status quo because you just forgot an important bit of their character development. It's writers either not understanding who they are writing, or just not caring about who they are writing, and the story they want to tell being more important than whether it actually makes sense. Minor continuity nitpicks versus sweeping changes to who a character is, why they do what they do, and how others treat them. From what I've read, she had mentioned and mourned her children as then recently as 1998, only 6 years before this comic. And while 6 years can be a very long time in comics, it was in this very volume of the Avengers, so it's not like it was some obscure miniseries from 2 decades beforehand. It's also not like there was some off-screen massive time skip where something could have happened to change her character, change her memories, make her suddenly become unhinged as a result of this loss of information. It's just they forgot it happened and then pretended it never did! All in service to a crappy plot point for a crappy storyline, and even more crappy continuing to come for years after! Carol Danvers and Falcon refuse to believe that Wanda could have done this, that it's not in her blood, but Nick Fury points out that she was a mutant terrorist before joining the Avengers, and she's Magneto's daughter. Although she isn't anymore because of movie rights bullcrap, but whatever. She was a premier member of the Brotherhood. And she married a robot. No offense, I mean, the Vision is a robot. If I was dating a robot, you'd all talk about me behind my back.
Spider. Won't you ever grow up?
Okay, I feel like this is a really irritating thing that I see sometimes in bad comics featuring Spider-Man in a guest role in a big crossover. Spidey is a jokey character, but oftentimes writers think Spidey would be making awkward, inappropriate jokes at the worst possible times, and then everyone looks at him like he's an idiot, and he tries to ramble his way out of it. Like, I'm with Falcon. What are you even doing here? What is the point of this sequence? 3 Avengers are dead, and this comic is saying that a 4th one is the one who murdered them. Why are you making jokey jokes and snark?
This isn't funny!
One of the heroes mentions the loss of Wanda's children, and Doctor Strange asks if anything happened to them, since he was the one who delivered them. Beast explains the truth behind Wanda's kids and how Agatha Harkness erased her memory of them, which, again, got undone already. And Doctor Strange is baffled why no one ever came to him over this. It's also pointed out that Wanda has had trouble controlling her powers before. When Carol Danvers mentions her access to chaos magic, Doctor Strange is more confused, and we have a few panels of people rambling off to the side for no reason. Then where is she, Carol? She's the only one not here. Thor isn't. Yeah, and didn't you guys fight that Loki guy once? Could it be that Loki guy? Got a mischief. Why? In the middle of your big exposition dump about how a fan-favorite character has turned evil and murdered a bunch of people, are you having characters just spout off random bullcrap and asides? What tone are you going for? Iron Man, who is here now, I guess, says it couldn't have been Wanda because she was with him at the UN. Admittedly, though, the comic did have her face in shadows, so it could have been an illusion. I will give credit to the comic that point. Doctor Strange suggests that Wanda might not even be aware she's doing all this. My theory, listen to me. This chaos magic, the source of her new reality-altering powers. I am the master of the mystic arts. And I am telling you, there's no such thing as chaos magic. Well, my theory, listen to me, about chaos magic, the thing that has been a presence in comics for years before this, I am the master of this futon where I read comic books, and I am telling you, you are absolutely full of crap. It is a statement so full of crap that not only did a what-if story imply that this is just an illusion of Doctor Strange because the real one is all, what? Of course chaos magic is real. But they actually went out of their way later on to add more and more backstory to chaos magic as if to give the middle finger to this attempted retcon. Like, what were they thinking with this? It's not even essential to the story. They could have just had Wanda actually be super powerful, but she never tapped her full potential or whatever. We get 2 pages of Doctor Strange trying to justify this nonsense using old artwork of Wanda, and honestly, even if it wasn't downright character assassination for no good reason, some of it comes across as kinda misogynistic. And listen to me tell you the story of an orphaned mutant with a sordid, violent past, with powers she did not earn nor can she control, powers she never fully understood. Can you understand the delicate mindset of a woman, a person, who has control over reality? Damn delicate women and their unearned power over reality! Yeah, I know that's not what he means by that, but why even bring up she's a woman then and quickly correct to a person? Anyway, all he's saying is that for someone who has the power to alter reality, your mental state can deteriorate when you need to constantly be in control, lest your imagination run wild and manifest. And that any time you give in to your own desires to change things, you lose a little of yourself each time. Further, that the lifestyle she lives, chaotic and full of danger, creates stresses that make her ultimately decide that she deserves happiness and will alter reality to give her that happiness. Except, of course, if this were true, then reality alterations would be happening all the time. She would have willed her children back immediately, decimated any enemy they had. There'd be little to no consistency because she was constantly changing reality to fit her whims, because I guarantee ya, she wasn't constantly holding herself in check for the past several decades of comics. Well, okay, except for her deadly finger-pointing from her first appearance, but she was green back then. Kinda literally, even. Like, she would not have suddenly gone crazy upon learning about her lost children. Someone under that kind of constant pressure probably would have snapped long ago, or, like, had dinosaurs show up to fight Ultron because of an errant thought. But no, instead, Doctor Strange says that the person he's described has lost control of themselves and are highly disturbed. Now, does anything I have described not sound like Wanda Maximoff?
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you forever. Fuck yourselves. Go fuck yourselves, you fucks.
Beast asks why she'd attack them then, and Doctor Strange doesn't know, but he can lead them to her. If this is true, then there is no way you could be prepared for what we'll see when we find her. They soon find Wanda in a clown suit and yodeling while squishing her hands in bowls of mashed potatoes. They go to her and she's in some kind of black and white fantasy with her kids, Vision and Agatha Harkness. Cap arrives and asks Wanda to let him help her, but she just tells him to go away, her kids arguing that they should have punished all of them. Yeah, they're trying to imply that that dialogue from the end of part 1 was her kids talking, or one of them talking to her, and it's such nonsense. Cap tries to convince her they're not real. The kids were even just speaking with her voice, which admittedly would have been really creepy if they had done that in WandaVision, but would have undercut some of the stuff they were doing there. She summons up an illusionary Red Skull and some Nazis to shoot at him, promising the kids that they'll never be taken from her again. The illusion breaks and Carol Danvers yells at her over all that she's done, and she just summons up illusions to fight them all, until Doctor Strange summons up the Eye of Agamotto to knock her out. Is she breathing? She is alive, but she is gone. Her mind was in a delicate state to begin with. Retcon sickness, I see it all the time. After Nick Fury confirms that Agatha Harkness has gone the way of Norman Bates' mom, Magneto suddenly shows up to take the unconscious Wanda away. Xavier was right. It was you. Man, it would really suck if there was no context for these lines within this story and you'd need to read the X-Men tie-in to it. I assume. I didn't read it. Magneto, where are you taking her? To an event comic that will hopefully be better received than this story. And so our comic ends with everyone leaving. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of Avengers Disassembled. Okay, I tell a lie. They also included 3 pages of the old original Avengers issue where Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver joined the team. Why the hell they decided to do this for the final regular issue of the book, other than to rub it in the audience's faces that, hey, remember when the book was full of hope and inspiration and trust and camaraderie and the Scarlet Witch wasn't evil? Ha 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 ha! Yeah, go to hell! This comic sucks! Easily comparable to stuff like Graduation Day or Heroes in Crisis. Though definitely being better than the latter, if only because it's shorter. The trade also includes a one-shot, Avengers Finale, which is a laughably goofy title considering New Avengers would launch soon after this. In it, Tony has to explain to the remaining Avengers that with everything that went down, he can't afford to fund the Avengers right now. Beast brings up that no one is sure what Wanda's actual plan was. Why go after them at all? Why kill some and not all, etc., etc.? It's a question that remained pretty much unanswered, until the miniseries Avengers The Children's Crusade, where we learn what really went down. That after learning about her lost children, the Scarlet Witch actually went to Dr. Friggin' Doom of all people to ask for his help in resurrecting them. It was Doom who manipulated her into doing everything in this book and House of M. Although apparently that got retconned into him just lying for her and she was responsible? Why would you do that when you have an out that fans would accept and be happy with? Point is, there was eventually some resolution to this crap, and oh boy, is Avengers Disassembled crap. Even putting aside the continuity errors necessary to make the story happen, what the hell was anyone supposed to take away from this? A long-standing hero becomes a villain seemingly overnight, she makes a bunch of random stuff attack the Avengers and humiliate them for no real reason, and then she goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and they have to knock her out so Magneto can fly her away.
Then all we learn is that we're supposed to live in the suburbs, not in the city.
The writing is frustrating in that way that only Bendis can pull off. Characters continually going back and forth with asides and snark that are wholly inappropriate to the situation while not letting the actual plot exposition go on. Everyone's pissed off or being pissed on, and nothing is accomplished other than killing or ruining a bunch of characters. Can we take a moment to also acknowledge that the art is really kind of ugly? David Finch's pencils are pretty decent, though he makes a lot of weird facial expressions throughout, and some characters have kind of lumpy faces in a few panels. But what the hell was going on with the coloring for a lot of it? I get that the color red can signify chaos and battle and make things more energized, and maybe the idea was to subtly allude to the Scarlet Witch's influence, but if that's the case, it's not cute, it's just frustrating because the red tinting just made it hard to look at and distinguish characters unless they were glowing bright blue or purple. It's just a very dreary palette, and to be fair, this is not a happy story, but it just makes an already unpleasant read that much worse to go through. Well, it took a lot longer for its garbage to be retconned and fixed than, say, Heroes in Crisis did, it goes to show that all the changes that started with Avengers Disassembled eventually got undone. It just sucks. Next time, while this may not have been an event by my definition, it's time once again to talk about books that most certainly do. In Event Comics Month 5, Secret Crusade of the Dark Convergence. And so our comic ends with everyone leaving. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of Avengers Disassembled.
We hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store envy link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Teespring. Thanks for watching.